To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Alright, this one is going to be a little bit morbid, so if you're afraid of death, or dying, or gross stuff, probably don't watch this one. But here we go anyway. Now, we all know Disneyland is known as the happiest place on Earth, but for some people, it can also be known as the last place on Earth that they'll ever vacation to. This is a video about Disneyland deaths. And like I said, if you don't want to know, or you're just adverse to things like that, probably go check out one of my other videos, like the top 5 misconceptions about Disney. And I am most likely going to try to stay away from making jokes about people's deaths because nobody likes dying. Death isn't that funny, especially if it's the death of a loved one. So without further ado, here are 5 deaths that took place at Disneyland. 5 seems to be a little bit of a trend here. Number 1. June 7th, 1980. Gerardo Gonzalez was a recent graduate of a high school in San Diego. And being a high school graduate in California means you get to go to Disneyland for grad night. In the early morning hours of the grad night celebration, Gerardo was climbing from car to car in the People Mover attraction in Tomorrowland, the one that's sadly closed today. This horseplay, though, would soon prove to be deadly. As Gonzalez was climbing from car to car, he accidentally fell onto the People Mover track. This took place when the People Mover entered the super speed tunnel part of the attraction, near the former America Sings building. After falling to the track, Gonzalez was struck by an oncoming train of cars. The weight of the cars crushed Gerardo and dragged his body a few hundred feet before the ride was finally stopped by an attendant. Gonzalez was alone when he was riding the People Mover, so nobody noticed or could hear Gonzalez as he was being brutally dragged to his death. No lawsuits were filed against the Disneyland park because Gonzalez's death had been because of his own negligence. This incident is eerily similar to the death of Ricky Yama, who died on the People Mover in a very similar way after the ride had only been open for 1 month. Number 2. On May 15th, 1964, Mark Maples from Long Beach, California boarded the Matterhorn bobsleds for what would be his last time. Another act of negligence, Mark was killed when he tried to stand up when the bobsled reached the top of the lift hill. He lost his balance and fell to the track below where he was struck by an oncoming train of bobsleds. There seems to be a pattern. Remember that when Disney tells you to keep your seatbelt fastened, that means keep your seatbelt fastened and don't stand up in the ride, because you may not enjoy what comes next if you do not. Again, there was no suit filed because this death was due to Mark's own negligence. Another similar death occurred on January 3rd, 1984. The woman was thrown from her bobsled into the path of an oncoming bobsled. The place where she died is reportedly called Dolly's Drop by the cast members. Her death was again caused by a seatbelt being unbuckled. It is unknown, though, whether the seatbelt malfunctioned or she did it willingly. Number 3. Bogdan Delaroe was an 18-year-old Brooklyn resident who drowned trying to swim across the rivers of America. Bogdan and his 10-year-old brother had managed to stay on Tom Sawyer Island past park closing. The boys then decided to enter the greater park after closing. Bogdan decided to carry his younger brother on his back as they swam across the rivers of America to New Orleans Square, or Frontierland. Not quite sure exactly where this took place. About halfway across the rivers of America, Bogdan lost all of his strength and went under the water. The younger brother managed to doggy paddle and get help from a cast member, but Bogdan's body was not recovered until the following morning. Number 4. On September 5th, 2003, a 22-year-old man was killed while riding the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad in Frontierland. The train that he was riding through the mountain had become derailed. The incident also injured 10 other guests. Investigation reports and discovery by the victim's attorney confirmed that the injuries occurred when the first passenger car collided with the underside of the locomotive. The derailment was a result of mechanical failure which occurred due to emissions during a maintenance procedure. Never cut corners, ladies and gentlemen. It turns out that the fasteners on the left side of the locomotive were not tightened or safe-tied in accordance with specifications. As the train entered a tunnel, the axle came loose and jammed against a brake section, causing the locomotive, that's the front of the train, to become airborne and hit the ceiling of the tunnel. The locomotive then fell on top of the first passenger car, crushing the victim. This death is horrible because it was not caused by guests' ineptitude, but instead by a faulty ride vehicle. And finally, Number 5. For this final death, I will be quoting from Snopes' article on the Disneyland death, so make sure to go check that out if you're interested in more Disneyland myths, or, deaths, if you're into that. On the evening of July 8th, 1974, an 18-year-old woman from Santa Ana named Deborah Gale Stone was working the attraction as a hostess. Now, essentially the job of a hostess is to greet every new audience as they settled into the seating area. Standing to the left side of the stage, she welcomed the guests over a microphone before the outer ring rotated and carried the audience to the first scene of the carousel. At about 11 p.m. that evening, Stone approached too closely to the area between the rotating theater wall and the non-moving stage wall. Unfortunately, she arrived at the exact same time that the audience began to rotate. She was caught in between the two walls and was crushed to death between them. The ride operators were only notified after a guest heard her screams from an adjacent theater. Eventually, the solid walls were replaced with breakaway ones to prevent similar incidents from occurring in the future. Hey guys, thank you for watching. That is 5 deaths that took place at Disneyland. Now I know it's the happiest place on earth, but it feels weird walking around there knowing that people have died there. Anyway, with new modern safety regulations, the park is a little bit more safe, so I wouldn't have to worry about that as long as you keep your seatbelt buckled. Make sure to let me down in the comments below, what do you think is the most dangerous Disneyland attraction? Very excited to see your guys' feedback on this one. Anyways guys, thank you as always for watching. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for more up-to-date updates on my videos and my life and my Disneyland trip coming up. Yes, I will be in the park. And make sure to donate on Patreon so we can get better quality videos and I can get into the park more often. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to follow that code, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.